welcome this evening. We want to thank you for coming out and joining us for this important conversation. One of my duties tonight is to remind us that we are going to stay on schedule and that we are hoping to adjourn at 7:30 p.m. So we'll do a brief reminder right about 7:15 that we're getting close to the end of our time for our discussion this evening, and then we'll adjourn promptly at 7:30. I'm pleased to introduce the moderator for our discussion this evening, Grant T. Lee. Prior to joining the University of Akron's law faculty, Professor Grant T. Lee practiced law as an attorney in private practice in San Francisco, served as counsel to the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee, and served briefly as acting deputy staff secretary and special assistant to the president in the White House. He was the founding chair of the Akron Civil Rights Commission and founding director of the Akron Law Plus, or the pre-law undergraduate scholars program, a diversity pipeline program funded by the Law School Admission Council. He received his BA from the University of California at Berkeley and his JD and MPE, or Master of Public Policy degrees from Harvard University. Professor Lee writes in the area of race and complex systems. He teaches courses on property law, employment discrimination, and social justice, lawyering, among others. In the fall of 2020, Professor Lee created and taught a free online course to the general public on racial equality in the law, in which over 5,000 participants enrolled. Please welcome Grant T. Lee.
Thank you so much. That was a very long and generous introduction, and you are actually not here to hear from me. I am the moderator tonight. My job is to be an impartial moderator and to help the proceedings go smoothly so that it can be constructive and informative for all of us. I'm going to talk about sort of how the evening's going to go, but I'm going to start off by letting you know that we are finishing at 7:30. And so when we get close to that time, I'll give you a reminder and we will be stopping on time. What we're going to do is the mayor is going to start with some general remarks for 15 or 20 minutes. And then we're going to move to Deputy Chief Harding, who is going to also give a few opening remarks. I'll ask a few general questions to get us started. And then after that, it's your time, right, to ask questions. There's two ways to do that. There are two mics, right, on either aisle, and so you can come to the mic to ask your question verbally. In addition, there are people with index cards. If you would prefer to write out your question, you can raise your hand. Someone will bring you a card. Those cards will be relayed to me, and then I will read those questions for you. And so that's how the evening's going to go. I hope we get a chance to answer many of the questions that you might have about this process. Mayor Mullen.
All right. Is this on? Okay, it is on. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for taking some time out of your day to be with us here for this conversation. This is the second of two town halls that we've had in the last few days. We had one last Saturday at Buchtel, and glad to have this here tonight. Before we start, glad to have everyone in the audience. Want to particularly acknowledge some of our elected officials, our City Council President, Margot Somerville, at-large Councilman Jeff Fusco. I can't quite see his face, but I can see his rubber ducks hat. And Ward 10 Councilwoman Sharon Connor. Is there anybody I missed? This is always one of the hardest parts. Okay. So I just wanted to give a brief overview of the process. We started this process at the end of last year as Chief Milet decided to retire at the end of the year. We had a town hall with the community at Garfield CLC in January. And then we conducted a community survey and an internal survey within the department. And then we had interviews with 2 finalists, our 2 deputy chiefs, about 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago. And following that, determined that we had 1 finalist, Deputy Chief Harding, who we're bringing forward to these town halls. One thing I want to note is that there have been obviously some concerns raised about the process and the decision that I made to move from an internal and external search to purely an internal search. As you may have seen when you came in, we have a frequently asked questions document in which I try to address some of those concerns and the reasons for those. I'm happy to talk more about that and happy to talk with folks after about that as well. But I owe people my best judgment, and as I've talked about a couple of times, that is my best judgment on what the law is and on the necessity of moving forward with a permanent police chief who can help implement my vision. And as we move forward with the process, that's been the question that I've asked myself, right? Do we have a candidate who can help implement the vision for change in public safety, change in policing, change in how our police department interacts with our community, change at many different levels at a systemic level? And in this finalist, Deputy Chief Harding, I feel strongly that we have that person, someone who can advance my vision for change. We've looked for somebody with experience, somebody with integrity, somebody with a track record of solving problems, and I hope we get a chance to hear from him today about his experience, about his thoughts about how we move forward as a community. I also want to just note that this part of the process, despite there being 1 finalist, is really important to me. It's important that all of us, both the 2 of us here on this stage, but folks in city government who are here in the crowd, but also the whole community, that we have a conversation about what we want to see in a police chief and what we want to see from our police department. This issue, policing and public safety, has been one of the most difficult for our community to grapple with over the last few years. And we recognize that these are difficult conversations. We recognize that people have many different perspectives. But the only way we're going to be able to move forward as a community is by leaning into those conversations. And so that's the part of the process that we are at now. We're going to continue to have these conversations. It has been a pillar of my administration. But with that, I want to kind of help set the tone for where we are tonight. We're really excited for you to hear from our finalists and hear more about his ideas, his background, his experience, and his goals. So with that, Deputy Chief Brian Harding.
Thank you, sir. I'm showing my age by needing to get my glasses, so bear with me. First off, I want to say thank you. Thank you to the mayor for your belief in collaboration and community input, and also your unwavering support for public safety. You mentioned from the beginning about Safer Together, and I think that really is kind of holding true. I also want to thank the elected officials that are here today. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being here. But most of all, I want to thank all the community members that are here today. This is really a chance to engage. It's an opportunity for me to learn more about what your expectations and goals and roles are, and learn a little bit more about me, who I am, where our police department is, and where I think we need to be going. I'm really excited for that engagement. For those of you that were here on Saturday or were there Saturday, you're going to hear a little bit of me repeating the same stuff, but I see a lot of people in the audience that were not here, and I think it's important that I share some of the things I shared on Saturday as well. I want to start by saying a little bit about me. I've been married to my wife, Michelle, for 28 years. I have 2 adult children, 25 and 22, who grew up in Akron. I met my wife while I was attending the University of Akron. We got engaged right before we graduated and have been in the Akron area pretty much ever since. We raised our kids in Akron. Both of our children graduated from Hoban High School. For me, my career started in patrol, primarily in the Copley Road area on a night shift. I was on that area for around 5 years. Then I was a sergeant in patrol, pretty much in the same part of town, west side of Akron, for the majority of my time. I spent a long time as a sergeant in the juvenile child abuse unit. I tell people it's probably the best and worst assignment I've ever had. I learned a lot there. I've always been really passionate about children, and I was able to do a lot in that role. As a lieutenant, I worked in our Office of Professional Standards and Accountability, which is also our Internal Affairs Division. I was promoted to captain and was in charge of our technical services and our dispatch center, and then promoted to a deputy chief and went back to the investigative subdivision, where I was able to lead our investigative teams. And then I think it's probably been about 115 days now that I've been serving at the acting chief of police, and that's a really exciting opportunity. A few things for me that kind of drive who I am. I really value servant leadership. I believe as you continue to rise up in the ranks, it gives you an opportunity to serve more people and have a greater impact on the people that you work with and have an opportunity to serve every day. I believe in seeking feedback. If you're given the opportunity and have time, you should take time to get as much collaboration and input as you can get. You don't always have that time as a police officer, especially some of our patrol officers have to make split-second decisions, but usually in this role you do have additional time, and I think that's really important that you take the opportunity to do that. Honesty, integrity are naturally things that are imperative to me. I think we always need to lead with that. Try to make decisions that are including everybody, and try to pay attention to all our stakeholders. I think there's really three main areas, and I think we'll talk about them more tonight, that I think we need to be working on. And the first is community engagement and developing a relationship of trust with our community. That engagement is extremely important. One thing we've already started doing is what we call a park walk and talk. That's where our officers, specifically in patrol, call out on the radio, take themselves out of service, and they get out and engage with the community members. I'm really, really happy with the work that our officers have done. We're up over 220% in that number this year alone. So that's just one of the highlights for me that I think is really important. I also mentioned a program called Reverse Ride Along. That's something they started in Cleveland. I think maybe I maybe said it wrong at the last one, or was misquoted in the paper. What that is an opportunity for our recruits, while they're in the academy, to leave the academy and go out into the community and engage with community members. Different parts of town, so we learn the people in those areas. It's just the beginning of additional community engagement, but I really, really think that's important, that we create those opportunities and are purposeful about that as well. We've also re-implemented our Citizens Police Academy, and I'm really excited about that opportunity. I think that's a great way for our community to learn more about policing and for our officers to learn more about what the expectations of the community are. Number two for me is recruitment and retention. Those are extremely important issues. Law enforcement across the country has been struggling in both of those areas. We were not alone. However, I will say I'm really excited with the progress we've made with all of your support. I know some of our recruiting officers are here, and I want to thank them for their work, especially Sergeant Murphy, who I know is in the back. So we've really kind of changed that model when it comes to recruitment. I think it starts with having a really inclusive and diverse team of recruiting officers and being purposeful of going out and trying to target specifically people from this community and this area to serve. I think that makes a difference, and we've shown an impact. Our last academy class were 48 officers, and they're going to graduate at the end of August. I think that's really, really great. However, retention is an area we still have a lot of work to do. In the past, we would traditionally lose 5 or 6 officers a year with retention that they would leave to go somewhere else. Last year, that number was 19. We're anticipating it's going to be closer to 22 to 25 this year. That's an area we have a lot of work to do. I think one of the things is community support, and I think as we continue to engage with the community and the officers feel more appreciated, and we develop relationships with the people we serve, I think that will help that a lot. The last is reduction of violent crime. Everybody in our community deserves to feel safe. I'll say it again, everybody in our community really deserves to feel safe. It's our responsibility to work collaboratively with each of you and all our community partners in that goal. When I say violent crime reduction, specifically targeting gun violence, that's an area we've had an issue with the city for several years. We have seen that trend decrease last year, and I'm really happy to report it's down over 38% of shots fired and shooting calls for service so far this year. While we're still having a significant increase in gun seizures, we're up over 54% from last year in our gun seizures. I know the mayor's talked about some programs with community violence intervention and some other work, and we're really excited to be part of that. We will not police our way out of all crime. That's going to be a community input and community involvement that we need to do there. I'm really excited for the opportunity to engage with you today, to learn more. And I mentioned Saturday, one other thing I wanted to kind of get in front of for those of you that didn't have an opportunity to hear that. I'm well aware of some of the community concerns around a newsletter that was written years ago called Signal 44. For those of you who don't know what that was a newsletter that was passed around by one of the officers on a night shift that I was on a little over 26 years ago. I did not write that newsletter, nor was I part of passing that newsletter around. However, when that newsletter came up, let me rephrase, let me give you some more context. That newsletter was extremely divisive. That newsletter was racist, and it talked about members of this community, specifically members of the African American community, in a way that nobody should ever talk. It was wrong then, it was wrong now, but more about that. So specifically, after that newsletter came out, there was an investigation done by our Office of Professional Standards and Accountability. I was interviewed as part of that, specifically to see if I was offended what was written about me. So while that newsletter was also derogatory to members of the community, that newsletter also would routinely poke fun at officers, calls we were on, or just characteristics of officers. My partner and I at that time happened to be two of the officers that were picked on about our haircuts, that we would have matching haircuts and just different things like that. When I was interviewed, I was specifically asked if I was offended what was written about me. And I said I wasn't. I was asked if I thought what was written about me was funny, and I said that I thought what was written about me was funny. I was not commenting on the newsletter. So we're clear, as I said Saturday, that newsletter was divisive then, and it's still divisive today. There's no place for racism in our society. There's no place for racism in the Akron Police Department. And if that's there need to be consequences. And as chief, and throughout my career since then, if that happens, I plan on addressing it. I know that we have a lot more conversation and engagement. I'm really excited for that. I just want to again say thank you for being here. Thank you.
All right. I mentioned I'm going to ask a few questions first, but as we're talking, if you are thinking of questions on your own, then this would be a good time to start to articulate those. Deputy Chief Hardin, let's start by having you tell us a little bit more about your background, which, by the way, great choice.
Thank you.
And raising your kids here. Did you yourself grow up in Akron?
I did not. I actually grew up in a small town south of Canton called Bolivar. Grew up mostly there. My parents divorced when I was young, and my dad moved to California. So he lived in San Francisco. So I would also spend normally a month to 6 weeks every summer growing up out in San Francisco visiting with my dad. But primarily Bolivar, small town south of Canton is where I grew up, and then came to the university.
And so then why did you become a police officer?
Is that better? Is that better for me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll project it to you. Just paying attention to it.
Okay. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. I apologize for that.
So wait, the question was, why did you become a police officer?
I guess I was always interested in that when I didn't really have a family history like some officers do. When my parents got divorced, my mom worked at a factory. She worked at Hoover's. And she did that really to support me. That made a really big impact on me, that she would go to work just for that. And I always kind of looked at, I wanted a job where I felt I had a little bit more ability to help other people, and something that I would kind of always be different every day, right? Working in a factory, she would always talk about how mundane it was. And so that really made an impact on me. And I always kind of I enjoy people, so I enjoy communicating, I enjoy talking. And that was just an area I kind of thought that would be different every day, it would be fun, it would give me a chance to meet new people, and kind of really have an opportunity to do something maybe bigger than myself.
So thank you for that. And so you mentioned your 3 priorities, and you've talked about, a little bit about some of the specific things that you want to do in order to carry those out. I'm going to ask this question that's maybe a little bit more about some of the controversy there's been recently. So as you know, there's there's been tension and distrust, particularly between Akron's Black community and the police department, and that distrust has deep historical roots. What evidence can you offer that you truly understand, right, the perspective of others so that people can trust that you will bring change?
Thank you for that. I guess I would start by saying, I guess I'm well aware that I don't know everything. I'm always looking to learn more. I'm well aware that there's a distrust between the community, specifically the Black community, and policing locally. Not just with the Akron Police, but even more so distrust with white police officers. I'm aware of that. I can tell you kind of two things. Personally, what I've done or what I continue to do, how I try to handle that, and then organizationally, how I think what some of that stuff is. Me personally is being aware that I don't know everything. I think it's important that I surround myself with other people that can kind of give me a different point of view, perspective, and context. Whether that's community leaders that I've had an opportunity to meet with, some of the pastors in the Black community specifically that I meet with to kind of learn more about that. I know Chief Milet in the past started an African American Advisory Council. I've had an opportunity to meet with them and learn more there. But I really think we need to continually be open to develop relationships and realize we don't know everything and we need to look at different points of view. Last year, the Chamber, Akron Chamber, sponsored a training class. It was a couple-day class specifically for white males in leadership positions to learn more about diversity and to truly try to understand maybe where we came from and some of the privilege maybe we have and things we're not aware of. That was a really impactful couple days for me to truly maybe learn how I looked at things maybe different than some others. Help me understand that this is a quest you need to consistently be on to try to learn more. And that's really been an impact for me in an area I know that I need to continue to grow in. Organizationally, I think the city has DEI, Esther, I believe this year, and continuing to work in that regard and partnering with that. But I also think just developing relationships. As we get to know each other and develop relationships as individuals, we begin to break down some of those barriers that maybe can appear divisive initially up front. So those are just a few areas I can think of right from the beginning for me personally and us organizationally. And as we talk about even some of the stuff I mentioned at the podium around going out and connecting to the community, I think those are excellent opportunities for all our officers to learn the differences we each have.
So if I can, everyone can hear me, my mic works? I apologize. All right. I know you talked about those three main priorities, retention and recruitment, community engagement, violence prevention. Can you kind of expound on each of those and what you see as ways of really tackling each of those three big issues?
Sure. So the first is community engagement and relationship building. When I say relationships, I mean it's really trying to get to relationships of trust with each other. To me, the big change there is truly a shift in how we handle policing in the city of Akron. In the past, we primarily had a unit that did community engagement, and our patrol officers right now have 1.5 minutes between calls. That does not normally give them the opportunity to truly get out and engage. So looking at ways that we can reimagine some of the ways we respond, whether it's the scout team or some other things that we can do to lower the call volume, more online reporting, to lower call volume for our officers, to give them more proactive time. But it's also being purposeful. And when we talked about park and walk and talks, I think that's the first key area, is about capturing that, consistently talking about how important it is for our officers when they have even a few minutes to get out, and being purposeful about explaining why we do things and having a conversation with people. I think that's one of the most important things we can do. But we also can be more purposeful. So for our current staffing, a couple days a week, we have more staff than the others. During those days, putting our officers on special details and having them to go to community events, having them get out when there's a football practice or basketball practice, and truly getting an opportunity to engage with the community. I think those are just some areas right from the beginning that are really important. We also talked about the Citizens Police Academy. I think that's important, but I also think not everybody will have the opportunity to go to a 7 or 8 week, 3 or 4 hour training. I think us going out and re-engaging into the community, whether that's at a church, as a community event, or anywhere we can get that opportunity for an hour, hour and a half, and get out and have an opportunity to hear from our citizens what's important for them. I think that's impactful for our officers, but also an opportunity for us to kind of explain maybe why things occur the way they do and try to get a better understanding. Right now, that normally happens with our community engagement team, but that doesn't necessarily always get a chance to happen with the patrol officers that work a certain district. Breaking that mindset of always call to call to call and having the ability to free up those resources are just a few areas when we talk about community engagement, to me, are a big deal. Recruitment and retention, I handled, I think, several of those up there, but around retention, that is a really, there's a lot to that. We talked about community support. I think the community wants to feel supported by their officers, and their officers want to feel supported by the community. That's an area we hear repeatedly when we do exit interviews, and I think that goes with developing that relationship. I really think one leads to a success in the other areas. When I say one, that's community engagement. As we do get better in that space, I think our officers will truly begin to develop some more friendships with the people they serve every day, and I think that'll make a profound impact on what we're doing. Also, as we look at our recruitment, we've seen huge impact in the number of people coming in and some of the most diverse classes we've ever had, and I think that's been very purposeful. Before I forget, we just posted our tests this week, so if anybody here knows anybody that is interested in being a police officer for the city of Akron, join akronpolice.com. We're taking applications right now, so I think that's really important that we share that. And I think really we've also looked at, is there any barriers in our process? Specifically in the past, how we would test is we would have one testing day, maybe a day or two, and if people couldn't make it, we'd have a makeup. We're changing now to a different process called the National Testing Network, which will allow people to take the test on their own. So if you apply, there's going to be opportunities for you to take the test. We're well aware that some people maybe had an issue with their car, their ride fell through to go to the test, and then they wouldn't be able to be part of our process. So breaking down some of those barriers that cause concerns, I think are going to have a profound impact on our ability to continue to get more recruits, get more people to want to take that police test, and be more inclusive in who we're trying to go after when we talk about getting that. Retention was specifically, like we mentioned before, is that support. I think talking about the police station, that's going to make a big difference. I think people feeling valued when they come to work makes a big impact as well. And the last was violent crime, and specifically around gun crime. We've worked hard with our federal partners to look at trying to really target gun-related crime, whether that's through NIBIN, National Instant Ballistic Network, where we target key guns involved in crime, trying to use data and intelligence to decide how we allocate our resources to really try to make a difference in the areas most impacted with crime, and being purposeful in how we do that, whether that's monitoring social media, whether that's looking for other information that we can do when we talk about that. But like I mentioned before, I think policing is just one small part when we talk about crime and crime reduction. Not always reactive to what occurred and going out and investigating crime, and there's always work to do there, but also proactive on developing those relationships with people and getting information and try to understand how we can try to stop crime from happening before it even occurs, and partnering with credible messengers, community violence intervention teams to try to impact crime and give opportunities specifically for young people. I think it was 108 children last year arrested for gun crime in Summit County. That's way too high. We need to continue, whether that's out of school network, whether that's other resources to wrap around youth to try to give them other opportunities so gun crime isn't an area to try to really help them feel safe.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, so this is actually time for your questions. Again, here, please come up to the mics when you're ready. I'm also going to take this opportunity to remind us we have 6:34, so we have a little bit under an hour. Some of these topics are topics that people may feel very passionately about, but I'm going to ask you to keep your comments or questions to just a few minutes. Give me a mic, I could talk for 30 minutes, but nobody came here to hear me, right? We want to hear the responses of the other two on the stage. So, I see we have some people here. We're going to go here and then there.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I'm Apostle, I'm Reverend Pamela Pinckney. Now, before I say what I'm going to say, I want you to know, everybody in this room, I am not anti-police, I am not anti-white, and I'm not anti-male. I'm speaking through experience. And when I said what I said to you the other day, Mayor Malik and Chief Harding, it's through experience, both professionally and personally, of what I witnessed. And Mayor Malik and Chief and MC, I am going to hold you accountable if we have another Jalen Walker in this city. This is what I wrote to you. This is my book that I've authored and published, and I have in here law enforcement section of experiences I've had, both personally and professionally. And I'm going to just be brief with this. The reason I am opposed to your being the chief of police is not because of something personal that you've done to me. I am tired of us having only white leadership in the law enforcement department. Do not want a white police chief only if we can have a combination of something, because as I told Chief Harding before the meeting, he's white. He doesn't have the experience that we have as people of color. So he doesn't know how to relate to it. I'm also a ninth cousin to George Washington, the general, the first president of the United States of America who freed the slaves, and the general who won wars for this country. I'm against that. Also, because, as I stated over at Book Tour on Saturday, it's a racist and sexist portrayal of law enforcement, and it encourages the murder and massive incarceration of we people of color because you don't understand us, and you don't have a lot of insight. Matter of fact, as I told you before the media teaches you want to fear us and us to fear you, and that needs to stop. And I'm concerned about that. I'm going to give you a copy of what I had to say, because I was actually ready to have you recalled for having him without coming to us. This is not funny. This is very serious. We lose in line. Don't tell me, come on. Don't disrespect me, because I'm not disrespecting you. No, don't do that to me. If you're up here, I'm not going to bother you. The reason I didn't want that is because white leadership has been allowed to murder us in law enforcement. And I'm going to give you this, and you can take it from here. As you know, I'm running for president of the United States in this election, and law enforcement right now is being used to stop my process, as well as law enforcement officers are being used to cover up crimes being committed against me.
Thank you.
Currently.
Thank you. I don't know if you want to, please.
Question.
Hello. My name's Mike. I live in Chesapeake Point Apartments, which backs up to the Ericksons. And we had a home invasion the other night. It took the police almost an hour to get there. And we told them where the guys ran, and they're like, well, we're not going to chase them. So they broke into the lady's car. They tried to steal her car, and I called back the next day. I tried to get you. And I asked if they're coming out to fingerprint the car, and they said, no, why would we? No crime was committed. So on an average, we have gunshots every night. I was told by the sheriff's department that Akron police are afraid to come to my neighborhood. We never see an Akron cop in my neighborhood. I had a guy that threatened to shoot me. My neighbor called the police, gave them the tag number. It took them over an hour and 20 minutes to get there in a car. He says, what happened? I told him what happened. He says, the best thing I could tell you is pack up your stuff and leave town, because we're not going to do anything about it. The guy lives 10 doors away from me. They have his tag number. They know who he is. But Akron doesn't want to do anything about it. and the only people that patrol our neighborhood is the sheriff. And I don't know why Akron won't patrol Akron.
Thank you. I think you've drawn a clear picture of what you're experiencing.
Yeah, first off, I apologize for that. That's not acceptable. So we need to be better about that. If you stick around after, I'd be glad to get some information from you on that and look into that, because with time, I mean, an hour and a half on a home invasion is not acceptable response time. I mean, our cars are busy, but we're not afraid to go to that area. We patrol that area. We should be in that area. So if you want to stick around, I'd be glad to talk to you at the end and we can get you some answers on what's going on.
I appreciate that,
No,
sir.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Just to add on that, we are, as an administration, very aware of the challenges at the Erickson Apartments and have been working with state and federal partners on this. And so Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development came out and brought a team from Detroit to do inspections and to try to make sure we're holding those property owners accountable. It's been an issue I know for years, and I've toured around there as well with a number of our council members. So it's something that's on the administration's radar as well. But you're absolutely right. The APD, has to patrol there just like the sheriff's office. It is Akron, and we're going to make sure that people feel safe there.
I have two questions that in this part that are kind of the same topics. I'm going to combine them. How do you intend to support and prioritize mental health and well-being and to enhance training programs for future leaders of the Akron Police Department?
Thank you for the question. So I think that's great. All too often it can be forgotten, the mental health issues of not just the community, but also the officers. When we mention officers go call to call, that can have a significant toll on them when they see that. Last year we rolled out a peer support team. We have 34 current officers that are peer support, which is an opportunity for that. And if they go to a really traumatic call, having the opportunity to give them diffusings and have meetings with Safety Board Support Center, with counselors is really important, because emotionally supported and well officers are going to be better at engagement. They're going to do a better job with that. So I think that's extremely important when we talk about that. The city also has additional resources to help with mental health and support as well. And I think that's extremely, extremely important that we talk about that. And I think you had one other question as well.
The other one was about leadership training within the department.
Yeah, so we do training at each rank when we go through. We also look at external training. I'm really excited. I think sergeants, which is our first line supervisors, really kind of a key role for us when we talk about training. We give them initial training, but I think really investing in them is extremely important. It's a huge jump to go from being a line officer to initially being a supervisor. And I'm excited we're doing some additional advanced training with our sergeants this fall, which is really going to give them additional opportunity to learn more about how they manage themselves, how they manage each other, and how they can kind of really manage for change moving forward, because that's really the key role that can make the most impact when we do that. So I'm really excited for that.
Over here, please.
Hey there. Apologies. I have a couple of questions, but they're yes and no, so this should go by fairly quick. First one, for getting everything covered under the union contract, if Jalen was murdered while you were chief, would you fire the officers that shot 90 bullets at him? Yes or no?
I think that's already been solved, and shouldn't be even weighing in on that case.
But there's no investigation's already done, correct? How about you though? I'm asking you, as a person, as a man of integrity who doesn't
Sure.
believe in racism, would you fire them? Yes or no?
I think I have to follow the law in the contract with what occurred there. So I don't,
Okay, that
I have a
speaks
point
volumes.
there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Following up with that, you are also a man of integrity again. Would you release the names of the 8 officers that killed Jalen?
I think
They're
we've,
no longer under investigation.
okay, I'm sorry. I think we've shown the last one, when we have an officer involved shooting and there's no threats associated with what's going on, that we release the officer's name. We just did that in the most recent shooting, and I think that's our plan moving forward.
Okay, speaking of the most recent shooting, is there going to be a process to fire Officer Westlake after what he did?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Speaking of the most recent shooting, in response to Officer Westlake, are you going to take actions to make sure that he doesn't do something like that again?
I think we're absolutely willing. You want to handle that one? You said you wanted?
You can say it, and then I can.
Okay, no, I think we're absolutely going to handle that case like we are each one. That's being investigated by BCI for the criminal, and there'll be an internal investigation as well.
we already know how the investigations go, so I'm just curious as to what you have to say.
That's fine. I did want to add, Pranita, and I've added a couple times, that we've shared that we hope to release more information in the next few weeks regarding that specific incident. And so I don't want to get ahead of that. But part of this is that with issue 10 on the administrative side, we created a new part of that process. And so we do want to make sure that process has a chance to be put into practice. At the same time, I did say we as an administration, we released more of the body camera footage than was required under law. We've tried to be as transparent as possible. And we are sitting here planning to release more information in the coming weeks about that specific incident.
There are a lot of people lined up.
That's all.
Please, over here.
Hi, my name's William Reynolds. I've had so much going through my head as to what I'd say. So I'll say a few things and then I'll end with a question. Mr. Mayor, when we found out you were elected, I told you you gave me hope. I feel like that hope's been dashed in this process. I can't quite put my finger on where it went wrong, but I'm disappointed. Secondly, from my point of view, our issues in Ashland are racism, ageism, classism, and complacency. I see police officers. I had an interaction with an officer who the second time he dealt with me, because I regularly go through the police camera, the body camera footage. When he walked into the room, you hear him mumbling under his breath, F you. This is a constant issue that really needs attacked. It's a customer service issue. And holding these meetings are great. Hearing us is great, but actually doing something with that is the important step. What do you plan to do to deal with some of these issues of, I'll call them customer service, whether it's policy change or whatever? And one more statement. I'd much rather see Akron in a lawsuit fighting the police union than in a lawsuit fighting a kid who's been shot.
So I agree with you that we can talk all day long, but action's where it really matters. So I think customer service is extremely important. I completely agree with you on that. We do audits routinely, our supervisors do with body-worn camera, to look for things so hopefully we can catch stuff that doesn't even lead to a complaint. However, if you feel you were treated wrong, we absolutely want that complaint. And I understand some people don't feel comfortable bringing that forward to the police department. I'm aware of that. I think that's why the oversight board is another opportunity to bring that forward so we can investigate that, because we need to be customer service driven. We are in the customer service business as police work. It might be stressful, it might be challenging times, but we're here to serve other people, and customer service matters. So you have my commitment on that. So if those incidents occur, please let us know so we can work through those.
And I just want to follow up, every single opportunity when someone engages with city government, whether it's police, whether it's another department, is an opportunity to gain trust or lose trust. Treating people with dignity and respect is a core foundational part of that. We all work for you, right? And so whenever anyone is treated with foul language or with something that does not meet that basic level of respect, we want to make sure there's accountability and that behavior is changed, right? On Saturday, there was an individual who brought forward a really concerning allegation, specific allegation of racism. We each talked to him. The police auditor talked to him as well. We spent some time discussing it the next day in our regular meeting between me and him in his role as acting chief. Every single time someone brings an incident to my attention, right, you have my word that we are working to address it directly. The last thing I want to mention is that systemic change takes time, but again, talk is cheap and actions are louder, right? In the first month I was in office, we changed the policy requiring officers to put their name tags back on. Felt that was a basic first step that's really important to take. 2 weeks ago, 13 days ago, we changed the vehicle pursuit policy, right? A change that was triggered by APD doing their own internal review, but something that I felt was very important for us to move forward with, not doing chases for equipment violations going forward. So we have committed to reviewing our mass arrest policy. We've committed to reviewing our OC spray, chemical spray policy. Just yesterday, we had a conversation about the use of force policy itself, and that's an area our police auditor is very interested in. So these are things that we are going to tackle directly. In 113 days, can I tell you we've done all of it? No. Do I feel the urgency every time I have these conversations? Yes. But this is something I take incredibly seriously.
Hey, good evening. So it's clear there is not a great relationship between the Black community here in Akron and the Akron Police Department, right? You've spoken to that as well at the last forum. You've also spoken to your commitment to try to bridge that gap, to try to increase that relationship, right? I think over the past couple of weeks and the past, couple of months, there's been consensus amongst the Black community about our disfavor in this process, right? Specifically our disfavor in Mayor Malik's decisions in this, right? Albeit wrong decisions to my point, not the point, right? Folks are dissatisfied with not having a diverse candidate pool, right? As a result of the mayor's decisions, which leaves us with one other person and you, right? We've now realized that one other person has since dropped out. Well, not dropped out, but wasn't chosen by Mayor Malik because he didn't want to do a community forum, which I guess is another question. You know, do you think he should be the second in command if you want to do a community forum? But that's, neither here nor there. You can answer that one later. But, that strained relationship is there, right? And you have a commitment to try to increase and build that relationship. And folks want a more diverse candidate pool, but you also believe that you are the best candidate to run this department, right?
I do.
So, and being that best candidate, right? And knowing that you want to bridge the gap in the relationship in the community, would you be willing to withdraw your name now, knowing that the mayor is going to going to change the charter or propose a charter amendment to allow a diverse candidate pool, right? And then resubmit your name at that time, knowing that you're the best candidate and you'll survive that process. I'm not asking you, Shamus, I'm asking Chief Harding, if you'd be willing to withdraw your name so that the community can have a diverse candidate pool, you can continue being acting chief, and when the time comes for us to pick a permanent chief, you throw your name in the ring, and we let bygones be bygones.
You want to go? You want me to go first?
I don't want to hear from you, Shamus. The question is not directed towards you, and I appreciate your willingness to answer the question, but the question is for Chief Harding right now. It's not for you, it's for Chief Harding. If you'd like to answer the question about his second in command, we'd love to hear that, because I'm not sure how you can be second in command and not want to do a forum, but...
You can answer, then I'll answer.
Thank you.
I haven't really given that any thought, but I guess I'm going to have to analyze that.
Well, we got some time.
What's that?
So
No, let him finish. Let him finish.
that's,
Let Chief,
you can finish it.
No, I mean, I might be open to that.
let's talk about it then.
So I've been very clear through this process. We've had this conversation on stage 2 weeks ago, right?
That wasn't a conversation, but all right.
Well, you shared your thoughts, then I shared my thoughts, then you shared your thoughts. So, yeah. At the end of the day, I owe you my best judgment. I was elected as mayor of the city of Akron to give you my best judgment, right? You can disagree with my judgment, right? I have an obligation to listen and to dialogue and to engage, which I've done every single day I've been in office. But I owe you my best judgment, right? And so we can disagree about what we think the law is. But I have done an exhaustive review of what the law is. And I do not believe I have the authority right now to hire an external candidate, right? At that point, we have a decision to make. I had a decision to make. To pause the process and hire a permanent chief next year after we can move forward with a charter amendment, which we absolutely need to do, or to hire to go through a process with internal candidates. Now, I have been clear that I feel like doing that, moving forward with an acting chief for a year, is not in the best interest of our community. We can disagree on that, but that is my decision to make. And people can be dissatisfied with that decision. But I owe you my best judgment. The day I stop giving you my best judgment is the day I should not do this job.
So the second.
But please let me finish them, okay? I'll address your other question, right? Now, why do I feel that way? I put it some in here. But having somebody who can be a champion within a department to implement my vision requires having somebody who's going to be there longer than a month in their role, right? So having somebody who can go to the negotiation table, go toe-to-toe with the union, because I'm not afraid of the union, but it requires having someone who is able to put forward a permanent vision and say, I'm going to be here dealing with you this month, next year, is important. Having someone who can say, this is a policy change I'm making, because the chief makes the policy changes, not me. The chief who can say, this is the policy change we are moving forward with as a department. Having a chief who can say, because he believes it, community policing has to be the way our department runs, not just for 10 officers, but for 480 officers, is important. That's my best judgment. We can disagree on that, but that's my best judgment, and that is my decision to make. The second piece about the deputy chief. Now, am I frustrated by how that transpired? I absolutely am, right? We will address that going forward, but we have someone who applied for a job, right? And I felt after the interviews that I was only willing to hire one of those people. To bring both of those people before you would have been a farce. I'm bringing forward to you the one of the two candidates that I feel can help lead the Akron Police Department and implement that vision.
So do you think he's a good deputy chief then? If he's not good enough to be the chief, do you think he's good to be the chief number 2?
We're not here discussing and litigating the deputy chief.
But I've asked the question.
That's fine. We can discuss the question. But I feel that we are here in the interview process for the police chief. I have addressed his relation to the police chief. I'm not going to sit here litigating somebody who's not here on the stage and whether they're able to do that role.
If you don't want to answer the question, please answer the question.
I guess all I can say is I can ask for you to judge me on the decisions I've made as the interim, the decisions I continue to make in this role moving forward. So I look forward to that, and I need to be judged on what I do. So I appreciate it.
Hello, I'm Judy.
Hi there.
I guess my main question, and I'm going back to why we were here, which is, I'm still missing from you, what can we expect differently from you? I heard you say something about what the former police chief did, which was utilizing the best interest of some ministerial groups or individuals, and that didn't go very well, no offense. And I would hope that you would not use that as your bar, because the community is made up of more than just ministerial groups. That's number one. And I appreciate what you said about community engagement and making it purposeful and engaging. But I think when you look at champions for this community, I don't know where that gentleman went. We didn't talk before, but the things that he said are really critical. You're missing the key people that we're here to represent, and it's not just ministers, but it's the people. And so I'm glad, Mayor, that he's going to be your champion, but we need a champion in the community too.
Yep.
So I want to hear from you. What are you going to do differently? What are you going to do differently?
So I think I covered some of it, but thank you for the question. I think when we talk about being purposeful about engagement and connecting, that matters. And like I said, it cannot just be our community engagement team or a handful of officers whose role it is to engage. It needs to be the culture of the agency. Because I think as we go out in award meetings and we talk to people and we spend more time learning what the community wants, then we bring that back and fostering a relationship to move that forward where everybody feels valued and important and they have a chance to learn what's going on. That's, to me, how you really start to get to change that you need to have happen. So it's purposeful, it's engaging. For me, I believe in collaboration. I truly believe if you have the opportunity to get multiple points of view, you should take it. That's what I think is really important for me.
Right? It starts from you.
It does.
So, and all those officers underneath your auspice, right now, they are looking to you for guidance, for direction. And so let's just talk about training right this second. The trainings right now that they were just given orders to do, none of it had anything to do with community policing. None of it had to do with community engagement. None of it had to do with how do we interact better with the same folks we're talking about right now. And so I'm like, wait a minute, then where are we gonna get it if the mandatory training that they have to have doesn't address it, and the leadership tells us one thing, but we don't see it. And so that's where I'm looking for your guidance to help
Sure.
us see something different.
Sure, no, I appreciate that. So to answer part of that, you're right. Our officers this year have to have 3 days of in-service training. And there's a few blocks, a little bit of that, but not as much as we need. I think we need to absolutely get back to the day where we have full week-long training programs, where we can pull officers out and do that. And I think community engagement, de-escalation need to be part of that all the time. But it doesn't need to be training that we have for a week at a time, because those are skills you get and you can learn them and not be able to use them. It's purposeful. When we talk about training, it's training and culture and engaging all the time. That needs to be the change that happens. I think it's starting. Like the mayor said, it's not quick. It's slow, but it's purposeful. And I think the park and walks and talks are really important. Saying that we're there, not forgetting about it and talking about it at every staff meeting we have, talking about it in captain's meeting, as we talk about promotions and interviews, asking the people coming through, what is your plan to help us be better and engaging? And how are you going to champion that? And that's one thing as we go and we continue to move forward and we talk about what we're going to do different when we talk about promotions, is letting everybody know you're not going to be just judged on what you've done and the job you do walking every day, but you're going to be judged on your engagement. You're going to be judged on your plan for further engagement, how you support that with yourself and how you support it with the people that you work with every day. And I think those are the things that start to happen. It's starting to happen. Again, 115 days, we're not going to get there overnight, but you have my commitment that we need to continue to work on that.
I will tell you, working under great leaders, and I can name a few, but I'm not going to, one of the things when they took their role, whether it was interim or not, we knew from the beginning, from day one, here's the vision. And you either catch it or you go, right? And so when you know the vision, you march towards the goal, right? And so it's just, I'm just waiting for everybody to feel the vision, because they know where you're going.
Yeah.
But we need to know the vision.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I was going to ask that question first, but first off, I'd like to address your best judgment. I was going to address my question first, but I wanted to address the idea of your best judgment, and this isn't a question for you, so you not need to respond, but during a period where there has been massive unrest and massive civil disapproval of not showing or naming the 8 officers, you found it your best judgment to continue to conceal those people's names. So the community has lost faith in your best judgment, and I don't agree that your best judgment is what we should be using for a metric, because we should be using the community's opinion. That's just a statement, you do not need to respond. So my first question, I wanted to ask the police officer, how is your community engagement any different than propaganda? And by propaganda, I mean the police going out there and telling the citizens how good of a job they're doing, essentially. And knowing that propaganda, or rather, community engagement is not statistically shown to have any effect on police violence, why would you continue as your forefront metric to use community engagement to reduce the violence? I have another question about that, but I would like to answer first.
You want me to go? Yep. Okay, got you. So I think you use propaganda. I would kind of disagree with that. I think it's not propaganda. I think when we talk about whether there's a police chief survey or we get surveys in the community and we look at what the community asks for us, I think they ask for They want respect, they want dignity, they want engagement with their officers, and I think community engagement is really important. I think if you look at a lot of the national studies, they talk about that engagement. I think it makes an impact. I think it does make a difference. I think it helps with each of the buckets we talked about. I think it's important that our officers do that. So I kind of disagree when you say you feel that it's propaganda. I think that's really, really important, and I think a lot of the studies are going to back that up. I think it is what we need to be doing, and it is my vision.
So with that, I would like to, with that propaganda element or whether it be denial or seeing as community engagement was your only, well, one of 3 metrics that we decided to use to address community violence. Can you pinpoint what exactly was the failure between the moment Jalen Walker was killed and when another individual was shot, a 15-year-old, about 4 blocks up from here? And what was the exact failure within the police's processes to allow that to happen again in such a short time period?
Do you want
So I think
to? Can you restate it just so people are?
I think the question is, and I'm going to ask that to be the second question, and we have a lot of questions. Maybe if people have further questions right after everybody gets a chance for the first one. But I think that your question, as I heard, was between the time of Jalen Walker shooting and the most recent shooting, what has changed?
No, my question was, can you pinpoint the exact failure of the new
Can you pinpoint the exact
implementation-
failure?
The new implementations of the processes that you decided to do to change the community or the police force between now and Jalen Walker, and what failed because clearly kids and people are still being shot.
I still haven't, I'm sorry.
So can
Are
you
you talking
pinpoint
about
the
the
failure?
changes that they've announced that didn't work? Is that kind of what you're...
Yeah, no, I'm saying, can you pinpoint the failure between what you guys said that you would do to change the police force that got Jalen Walker killed?
Can I?
And
Failure in the process is what she's asking.
what's
Yeah.
the failure between the process? Can you pinpoint the exact thing that you guys didn't do that you should have done?
Sure. So I want to be really clear, and certainly you can respond if you like, but we cannot prevent every critical incident, every officer-involved shooting, right? But we have to do every single thing possible that we can to reduce the likelihood of anything like that ever happening in this community, right? I take that very seriously. I think many of us in the room take that very seriously. The example I gave to you about the pursuit policy is one way of reducing the likelihood, reducing the likelihood that an incident would lead to a situation in which force is applied that way. Now, this specific incident, it has to go through the BCI process. It has to go through the police auditor process, the internal investigation process. I'm not going to speak to, we're not going to give you a ruling as to whether it's reasonable or unreasonable, right? But we take that incredibly seriously of what we can do to reduce the likelihood of use of force or officer-involved shooting in any moment in this community.
I agree with you on that. They're devastating on a community. They greatly decrease the trust that we have. We take that very serious. No officer comes on wanting to ever have to use deadly force. So we will absolutely after action those when we're done and try to look if there's anything we can do better through training or additional awareness for that, because I'm with you. They're devastating.
Can we come to this side, please?
Hi. Malik, you said that you work for us, but we as the community feel like you're not working for us. So how are you, as well as this chief that you're choosing, can trust you? Because right now, I feel like listening to everybody, as well as online for the last couple of weeks, we're losing your trust. And the first thing that you said when you was trying to debate becoming mayor is that we can trust you. Trust comes a long way. Words is your bond, but your actions is even more. So how are you going to make sure that we can trust APD after Jalen Walker, after Savian Williams, as well as Behira Fields, as well as many more that has been killed or beaten? we feel like we're losing our rights, our First Amendment rights. There was a lot of protesting when Jalen Walker was going on. People were being falsely accused of things, being arrested. A whole lot of things that has happened in this community. How are you going to actually fix it, and what are you going to show that you're fixing it? Because right now, like I said, trust comes a long way.
So I want to be, I want to address it. I want to be careful not to take up too much time, but I have to say this. If your yardstick for whether I can be trusted is whether I'm going to pause this process, then you have your answer, right? What I can tell you is that every day I wake up trying to implement the things that I promised and I told you that I would. We put online the priorities of this administration the first 100 days, 73 things. We've made a lot of progress on a lot of them. You talk about the aftermath of the Jalen Walker killing and the incident that happened on Copley Road. We have agreed and committed, and I did it in the State of the City 2 weeks ago, to reviewing and changing the mass arrest and the crowd control and the chemical spray policy, right? With public input. That is a tangible, direct thing. I talked to you about the policies we've already changed. We've unveiled a new community violence intervention program that, with respect, we've talked about for a long time, but we finally are making tangible steps to actually implement. Now, I stood out there on Britton Road next to him a couple weeks ago out in the rain. I'm so glad that young man is still with us. These are systems that have developed over decades and centuries. I'm not asking for your patience. I'm not asking for your understanding. I'm not even asking for your trust. All I am saying is that watch and judge my actions today, tomorrow, in the weeks, months, and years to come.
I have another question. Yes, thank God that 15-year-old is still living. We would like to see that officer terminated. There is no excuses for it. Just like there wasn't no excuses for the 8th officer. So, Chief, are you going to fire that officer? That is the question. I'll piggyback it off of Kai as well. Are you willing to withdraw and let us choose on what's going to happen for our chief? Because right now, because that 15-year-old could have been my son. I have 3 boys too. So here's another question. What are we going to do as a community to get mental health established and understanding and serious? Because right about now, walking through Akron, there's a lot of mental health going on because of everything that had happened after COVID and now during COVID. This community is hurting still because we feel like there is nothing going on. So I'm going to put you back on.
So I agree with you on mental health. I absolutely agree that that's paramount for the community. There's a lot of trauma, and mental health is the way to start that. It started before COVID. It was made worse during COVID, and it's been made worse over everything that's been going on over the last few years. So I completely agree with you on that. We talk about multiple services and wraparound services for community. We absolutely need that. Reference to the shooting that occurred the other day, I can't comment on that at this point. That's still going forward. I would be remiss to do that.
How about we try to make sure that there is a mental health facility versus continue to lock up people that are in a state of mental health. And I've been talking to our council because, like I said, I do feel like our First Amendment rights are being taken away. I do.
Yeah,
and I think there should be a mental health.
And we'd be happy to talk more about that directly with you one-on-one.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for taking our questions. Mr. Malik, Mr. Harding, thank you. To help with the young lady that was asking questions, she was asking about the tactics. And it kind of relates to the questions I had about You did mention, Mr. Mott, the changes in policy to the pursuit policy and using OC spray. I do ask, in your experience, because those pursuit policies and OC spray and things like that, those are common practice before you change them. So I ask, what are some other considerations to the common practices, especially when it comes to contact being made? She's asking about the tactical contact that was made. It was very reminiscent of the contact that was made on Tamir Rice in Cleveland, where an officer approached close distance way too fast, putting himself in danger. What changes to common practices, especially on contact, are you looking to consider to change to protect officers, but also protect citizens?
Yeah, so I think we're always looking at best practices with that. I know PERF, Police Executive Research Forum, will consistently come out with additional training. International Associations of Chiefs of Police as well. We're always looking for best practices. Also, the state is looking at additional training. There's ICAT training through PERF and some other on additional de-escalation, which we've been exploring and trying to roll that out as well. So I think that's the first part, is looking at that. I think the mayor talks about community engagement and our policies and making sure we're doing the things that the community is expecting us to do. But then when we roll out those policies, we have to be very purposeful about how we train around them. I think when we talked about the pursuit policy, that was one that we had been talking about for a while. We were eager to implement, and I think we're open to looking at other changes as well. But those are fast and dynamic involving events as well. Routinely, an officer will pull up on something. If there's a car with a gun and they pull up close, the person will take off running. So sometimes they do close that distance really quick. That's a decision that they sometimes have to make. In hindsight, sometimes that may not always be the right decision, and it can go either way. So those are split-second decisions we need to continue to train on. And when I talked earlier about that training not just being for those few days or once a week, but we need to be breaking out additional time to train throughout the week. If we're not on calls, to do that. As we look at training during roll call and breaking out a few minutes on that. So we always need to be looking for innovative ways to do that. And there's a lot of people leading in that across the country, and we need to make sure that we're keeping up. And looking for other ways that we can even lead from the front.
Part of this, if I can weigh in as well, is about having the time and space to be able to do those after action reviews, to be able to really take the time with the sergeants, the lieutenants, and really look at, there's a difference between a call where nothing possibly could have been improved in the response and a criminal act that violates the law. There's a wide spectrum between there, right? And in many cases, there are things that could be improved upon. And I've said from my part, since the day that the body camera footage of the Jalen Walker killing was released, that I thought that the number of officers who approached and the way in which that unfolded as he left the car created a situation in which so many bullets were fired that I viewed as unacceptable and systemic and that needed to change, right? And so as we go forward, we want to take every step to try to make sure that we have time and space to review these situations and then to figure out how we can train better on them. Part of this also is our new police auditor who's in place, who's now able to offer an independent recommendation on every single situation, a recommendation that goes to his email and to my email and to a number of people as well. A deputy auditor who's going to be hired to help support that work as well. Things that this community put into place that will help create additional accountability for me and for him in how we improve ourselves and prevent those deadly situations.
Will that auditor work retrospectively?
So I don't believe there's going to be any restriction on their ability to go back and look at previous incidents and look at data and statistics, to look at broad issue areas. We're getting into right now, as he's starting, what the parameters of the work are and how we ensure that we set up policies and procedures and make sure that confidentiality is respected and all of those things. But we want to make sure that the auditor has the ability to do their job. And so we've had 2 or 3 of those meetings so far with the auditor's office. We will continue to engage with him. We want him to be able to do his job constructively.
Thank you very much. Thank you both. Your success is our success.
Yes, sir.
So, as I mentioned, I would remind us, we have a hard stop at 7:30. It is 7:19. We will get one more from each side and maybe another. So fair warning. I don't know if do we want time for a closing statement?
Need a minute, not long.
Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for being here. My question is basically for the chief. I'm in the medical field, so when we talk about BMI, that policy is 30 years old. When we talk about hiring in the police force of people of color, African American, or we're talking about people in general of color, this is a problem. When we talk about the 7 steps to get to chief, African Americans will be at patrol officer, they will be at detective, they will be at possibly sergeant, and they don't go any further. That needs to be gone, because you got Mike Miller here, who is probably the highest ranking African American here, and he's not even in the reading. No disrespect to you. When we talk about diversity, inclusion, equity, it has to be shown in leadership of officers. The best thing that y'all have done is hire from in. Because the problem is, when you go outside and you hire outside, you give the 451 officers no, hey, we weren't good enough to be at that position. So my job to say to you, Chief, where is those officers? That needs to be moved off the table, and you need to have younger officers, not 10 years, but 20 years, to be able to have an opportunity to be in leadership. This has been systemic for years, and there's no excuse for it, and it's only white officers, and it's good ones, because I know some of them. Some of my family's on active plea, but the problem is African Americans aren't able to be at that thing. We got 7 spots, they're at 3 of them. 4 more to come up, that needs to be removed. Until that happens, is not gonna be any fear of diversity, inclusion, equity. And it should be women included too, but they're not because of the system. And the system has to change. And right now, you're being graded by the community because they need your trust. I understand you have to take on and support your office.
Let's get an answer.
But you need to make sure you're supporting the community too.
I appreciate your comments. I absolutely agree with you that we need to make sure that we're being inclusive, and if there's barriers to that, we do that. We also need to really be very, very formal in our mentoring and making sure we give opportunity to officers from the beginning all the way through and being purposeful.
That doesn't happen until you have African American officers at that level
where
the community can see that. Just don't see them when it's a crisis.
Understood.
Because all they are is a mouthpiece, and it doesn't change, and they don't have any authority at that level, but just to come to you, they don't have any other authority.
I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
This question is for the Deputy Chief. Leadership in a public capacity can present challenges, stress, and frustration. My question is, how important is faith in regards to your outlook on life and how you'll lead in a police department and community?
I appreciate the question on that. I am a man of faith. I'm a Catholic. I take that very seriously. I believe you can pray for guidance and things. I think my faith is important. That's one of the guiding principles that guides me as a person. I was raised that way. I continue to be that way, and I appreciate that. So I think it makes a difference in what you in who you are and how you lead, and trying to put the needs of others above your own is extremely important. And that's who I am. That's what I do. So thank you for that.
Why don't we try to do the last 3? Do you want to just?
I did 31 years fire, retired for 6 years.
Could you speak into the microphone?
we were dealing with that. And what the city did, they did a thing called 2 to 1. For every 2 white guys they hired, we hired 1 black guy. Now that kind of brought a little animosity to some of the other guys, and I understand why some white guys could have been upset about that, they didn't get a job. But in the process of doing that, the 7 of us, I had a class of 21, 7 of us was black. We got ranked. And as we got ranked, it did change a little bit. But as we started to retire, I don't think we were really being replaced. And I don't know, I wonder what is the makeup of the class that's coming on. But before you answer that, I want everybody else to understand. You gotta get our brothers and sisters, and I'm not excluding white people, but I'm just saying, we gotta sit down and take the test. They have a test, they give a test, 2,000 people sit down. Out of 2,000 people, 60 are black. Now what's gonna be your chances of getting some black guys? It's only 60 going, I'm not going against, but competing for the job. So we have to do that, and once we do get the rank, things did get a lot better in our fire department. So, if you could just explain
Yes, sir.
maybe the makeup of the class that's coming on.
Do you want to speak to the class? I'll speak to the.
Yeah, so the class that's there now, well, we have the most female officers we've ever had. We have 15 in that class of 48. I believe that's roughly a little over 20% African American as well in that class. So the diversity is one of the best we've had in a class that we just seated, and that's really important. Like I said, we're just giving another test, so that list is over. We just started with that. Hopefully we'll have as diverse or more of a diverse class this time, because I think you hit the nail on the head. That's extremely important. It makes a difference. The community's watching, and they should look at that, and that's really important. But thank you again for your comments about encouraging everyone to sit for the test, and all of us being purposeful about going out and finding someone else that we think would be excellent in that, and having them, encouraging them, and supporting them to become part of that process, and letting them know what a phenomenal career this can be, and what an impact they can have, and people they can serve every day. So I really appreciate your comments on that. Thank you.
Because as we get the rank, the number of guys that's competing for the promotion, our number gets real small.
Yes, sir. And I think if I can, I just wanted to add on that. You know, it's important to have as diverse a class as we can of cadets. Currently, that's the only way that people come into these jobs, right? Like you're kind of talking about, it's like a funnel. You have the number of people you have at patrol, at officer, then it goes to sergeant, then it goes to lieutenant, then there's just fewer and fewer roles. People stay in a role for 15, 20 years, and there's not as many opportunities. There's 2 pieces to it, right? We have to make sure that there's opportunity. And so this charter amendment that we're going to pursue is going to help us with the deputy chief and chief roles in police and in fire, right? But below that, captains, lieutenants, district chiefs in the fire department, those are bargaining unit positions. Only way there is for an officer to climb up through that rank right now. We would like to, as part of those labor negotiations, seek to have lateral hiring for some of those roles so that you could consider a broader pool. Now that's the thing we're going to have to negotiate for. I can't promise to you that we're going to get that, but that is a priority for me. The second piece, though, is the subtler barriers, right? Which is that why am I going to apply for a harder job, for a more challenging job, if I already don't feel supported? If I feel it's a culture that's not supportive, that's not inclusive. And so that is the real strong work that has to be done going forward within the police department, within the fire department, but frankly within the entire civil service of the city of Akron. I take that very seriously, and I want you to judge me on the result. And so I understand and fully appreciate folks' concerns with this specific search process, but when you look at the diversity within the fire department, the police department, and any city department going forward, I can promise you that it is a priority for me that you will see that change that you have not seen in decades. And I appreciate your service, sir.
So we had 2 people standing up. There's 2 minutes. There's.
I can just get him personally.
Okay.
We want to hear your question, man. Okay.
So here's my suggestion. If you can keep it short, give the question, I'm going to read the question, and then we're going to stop.
I'm going to try to make it as quick as I can. I'm wearing a shirt today when my grandson got killed. And I understand what we are saying today, even with Jalen. and we want justice in America, people. I don't care what color the skin is, it's the brain and the mentality of the brain that makes the world go round. Bad or good, this is what's happening to us. So what I'm saying to everyone, we're going to put the guns down, one way or the other, through the police or you and I. Now the chief, my question to you and our mayor, I kind of like his ideas. We want our officers to put their hats back on. If they can't be undercover, I don't want you to stop me. I'm not going to listen. Just if you can't put a helmet on, I'm in the military. I was in the military. I ran the flight deck as a E3.
After he's done, why don't we
So
hear
when
from
we
Pastor
talk
Pounds,
about
and then we can
the
discuss.
motivation of moving up as police chief, it doesn't take 10, 20, or 30 years to be ready for police chief. If you know your job, you know your community, you chief. You just take care of me. So what I'm saying, I had this done, and I want everyone that has somebody they lost. We want the 4th of July to be equipped with their picture on the front. The ones who came home, I want you to use a blue jersey. But now what we are going to ask the mayor and everybody else, even the federal government, we want prosecution. We want people, you ain't going to get 6 months. Now, the person that killed him is out, walking the street. I can't take it.
All right.
Do you want to talk about victims?
Please.
Victims.
All right, Chief, I do have one quick question, real quick. I want to just preface it with something that I did before I came in. I came up to the stage, and I touched you and shook your hand. I did that purposely, so if you don't mind, I've been improving my feelings about white men. And a part of my own personal improvement with my own implicit bias, and I have some, is touching white people. I don't have white people in my world. They're not in my neighborhood. I shook your hand, but when I saw Reverend Tibbs, I dapped him up, hugged him, beat him on the chest and everything. That's implicit bias, which I have expertise in, and I'm working through my own implicit biases. My question, how do you feel about black men? How do you feel about it?
Are we gonna?
How do I feel about them?
Want to give you some feeling words in terms of how I feel about white men?
I don't know how I feel about white men, or I guess I haven't looked at it that way. I mean, I like to hang out and do stuff and visit and socialize with black men, women, and white men. I mean, the same. I don't have.
Maybe that's one you can think about. I'm going to read these two because people took the time to write them, and then we're going to thank you all for being here. During your 20 years on the police department, how many black officers are your personal close friends? Mm-hmm. And describe the one-year review of the chief. What will the performance criteria be? Right, so on his one-year review, what will the performance criteria be? I think we have to stop. Is that?
Yeah, I think if you want to just make a brief closing
Yeah.
statement.
So, do you want me to
Brief
answer that
closing
one?
statement, please.
Are you going to do closing statement or that one?
The question, the closing statement.
Okay, closing statement. I want to thank everybody for being here. I appreciate the opportunity to engage. I appreciate the opportunity to learn more. I think it's important in this role to do that. I think it's important to continue to have conversations. So I want to say thank you for that. I learned a lot at each one of these, and I continue to learn, and I think I'm always on a quest for that. So I mentioned earlier, I'll mention again, I just appreciate you giving me the opportunity to judge me by what I do and don't do in this role moving forward and what I've done in the past. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight.